Welcome to Goldman Guitars, and thank you for joining me in today's video. I am making a custom pickguard, and if you can guess what guitar it's for, pause the video now and put your guesses in the comments below. I don't currently have a template for this pickguard. This is my first one for this style and for this type of guitar, so I have to make a template. So I'm currently roughing out on the bandsaw, just getting close to my line, and then we're going to clean it up with the sander here in a little bit. Cut out our humbucker routes and drill all the pickguard holes and just make sure that everything is perfect on the template before actually moving to the material for the pickguard itself. The layout for this guitar is going to be a little bit interesting. So we have no volume, no tone. We just have two humbuckers with a three-way switch, and we have an on-off kill switch, so that way you can kill it quietly while you've got a break on stage, tune up, change your settings if you need, whatever, and then turn it back on. It works as a kill switch as well, but the intent was just so that way you could quietly tune and not be making noise, since there's no volume to be able to roll off. The pickups are my Renegade PAF set. It's my best-selling pickup set so far. It's a split between a vintage and a modern humbucker. The neck is wound approximately to 8.5K and the bridge around 10K. It's an Alnico 5 magnet, and I'm using smaller coil wire. So the vintage ones used a bigger wire, and I'm using a little bit smaller wire that's typically associated with a distortion pickup or high gain overwound pickups. I don't overwind them, but I like the flexibility that the smaller wire gives me as far as shaping the tone and balancing the two pickups. The one thing I'm adamant about when I make my humbuckers is that they remain clear and articulate. The worst thing ever is having especially a muddy neck pickup sound, and so if you're a single coil guy like me, this is a humbucker set that you'll really enjoy. It still has all the good humbucker vibe to it, but I've been able to tailor it with my specs in such a way to where there's no muddiness. Each string rings loud and clear, and yeah, harmonically rich. As you can see, I'm using the spindle sander here to just clean up the edge and get close to my line, so that way I can have a perfect edge to follow along with the router and trim out the actual piece. I want to take a minute here to talk about Goldman guitars as a whole. There's been two things that people have asked me to provide for a very long time, and I just haven't been able to do it yet. That's about to change. So the first thing is that my guitars aren't cheap. I am a one-man band in a garage building every aspect of these guitars by hand myself. My pricing is very competitive compared to similar things in the market, but still spending $3,000 or so on a guitar is pretty difficult for a lot of people. So payment plans were one big thing. Because I'm a small shop, the only payment options I had through my website just weren't financially responsible. I didn't feel good about offering those to customers because of the high interest rate. And they took a pretty good chunk from me too, so it was more of a lose-lose situation. The second thing is, where can I go try one of your guitars? I've been very grateful that people have seen them online and bought them sight unseen. But having the option to go play one at a local store would be ideal. So recently I took my last build into Becox here in Eugene. They have an Albany location and a third location in Vancouver, Washington. I'm going to start consigning my guitars with them. So you will have a place where you can go and try them out. And in addition, they offer a really great payment option plan. So that way you can get into one of my guitars, make payments on it. It's good for the store, it's good for me, it's good for you because you can get into the instrument without spending all of your savings in one go. You can pay it in small chunks. So I'm really excited that that is an opportunity for me and my business, and I hope for you guys as well. You take advantage of it. I'm using Nitto tape here, Nitto. You can find it on Amazon. It is the best double stick tape I've found. I'm using a StewMac PAF humbucker template here, and this stuff holds really well, but it's not impossible to get off like some other things that are out there. I find it's just best for this. The template doesn't move around, so you get a good clean cut, but again, you're not destroying your piece trying to separate the two later. And wait for it. There, did you see that? Not good. So that piece of wood between the neck and the neck humbucker just broke out. Unfortunately, it's in a weird spot. It's a thin little area, and so I've just elected to leave it, and I'll have to come back and cut that by hand later. So when I'm using my template here, after I get the actual material piece cut out, I'll just have to be careful as to not go into that area with the router and mess up my piece. I'm using a white, black, white pickguard sheet, and I used Gorilla Contact spray adhesive to glue on this walnut burl veneer that I had. It worked pretty good. I have a couple of ideas as to how to improve this process so that way I have better adhesion, because there were just a couple of spots, as you'll see later on, where as I was working with this, the wood cracked and I had to glue it back down. But that said, it's on there, it's not coming off, it's not going to delaminate, as time goes on as this guitar is being played. But just from a manufacturing standpoint, I have a couple of ideas to make this easier on myself. If you'd be interested in pickups or modifying your guitar or just buying one of my builds, please reach out to me on Instagram. My website is not currently up yet. I'm still working on it, and we'll have it launched soon. Time to get this traced out on the router. So this bit has a bearing on the top that's going to guide along my template and then cut anything underneath it away to match. The only real thing to note here, if you're going to try this at home, is keep your hands away from the router bit. And also knowing what direction the bit is spinning in is important, because you don't want to move your piece in the same direction as the bit in most cases, because that will tend to just grab and move the piece and maybe move your hands straight into the bit. So it's best to cut against the direction that the bit is moving in. There are some instances in where you would prefer to use the router bit and cut in the same direction that it's moving in. It's called a climb cut. It's just something that you have to be prepared for and make sure your hands are out of the way. It's definitely safer on bigger pieces. On a smaller piece like this, it's kind of got a weird shape to it, and maybe you don't have a great handhold in a lot of spots. I wouldn't advise it. Here, I put in a 45-degree chamfer bit, and I'm just putting on that nice bevel on the top of the pickguard, so that way it's got a nice clean edge. Now just for a quick scuff with some sandpaper. This just kind of cleans up the bottom side of that cut beveled edge where the plastic tears a little bit. As you can see here, I lost a piece of wood. So I'm going to take a little bit of scrap, I color matched it, and I'm going to make this a clean joint straight cut with a razor blade, scrape away any of that little bit of glue, and then glue on my new piece. All of the video that I took of me at the drill press drilling all of the holes was a little too shaky to post. The vibration on the table shook the camera more than I cared for, so I excluded it from this video. But that's where I had a lot of issues of delamination, was with the drill press cutting through the wood and causing it to break out. When I drilled that pickguard screw hole in that very corner, it's a tight space anyways, and just broke off that little piece. So quick, easy repair. If I didn't tell you it was there, you'd probably never find it. A little bit of thin super glue, and that will be good as new. I'll get it trimmed up and sanded back to shape later. Some accelerator spray makes it permanent really quick. No set time involved if you use the accelerator spray, which is really nice. As I was looking over the edge to make sure that my glue joint was good, there's a couple of little spots where the router tore out some of the grain, especially around the end grain, sort of on the underside of the wood as it meets the plastic. And you can see that because I beveled that edge. So I'm going to scrape it clean, put in a little bit of glue in spots where it's very minor. And then there was one spot that had just a little bit more of a gap than I cared for. And so I'm going to mix up a little bit of wood dust here in a second and put that in the gap before gluing it. And I'll scrape it, sand it clean, and it'll disappear. Because my template broke out earlier in the process, I did not cut out the humbucker holes in the template. I just decided to do it straight onto the pickguard with the StewMac PAF pickguard template cut out. This works pretty good. It's not my preferred method, especially on something with veneer on plastic like this, because getting that template off, even with the double stick tape, caused a little bit of tear out in some of the grain, and so I had to gently glue it back down and make everything nice and neat. Because the little bit of wood and material between the humbucker and the end of the neck is so thin, I elected to use my jeweler saw. And truthfully, this is much quicker and easier to set up than a router template would have been anyways. And it's a little less aggressive, so your risk of tearing out wood in such a small area is a lot less. I just cut it just inside the line, and once I'm ready to actually fit it to the guitar, I just gently filed it to fit the shape. There was a lot of off-camera sanding, scraping, cleaning, all that sort of stuff. It's boring to watch, so I didn't include it because it's also not much fun for me to do. Here I am sealing the grain with Mohawk sanding sealer. That helps prevent any bubbles and things coming out of the pores, especially on something really porous like walnut. I finished it with this Minwax satin lacquer. It's very similar to a nitro lacquer, but it dries harder. It's a lot easier to work with and get a good polish on, and just overall a better product in my opinion. As I was assembling this, I attempted to put the humbuckers in and realized pretty quickly they don't fit, and that's a problem. I got these pickup covers from a different vendor than I normally use, and they are just ever so slightly too big. They do not fit through the StewMac PAF template. I filed and filed and filed by hand, and it was just not happening. And so I ended up putting my template back on the finished pickguard and very gently cutting out just a little bit more. I moved the template down just a tiny bit. It wasn't even a 16th, and retrimmed them, and they fit perfect after that. I had a long day at work, and I was doing this late into the night, and as I was watching back the footage, I realized I put this pickup in upside down. I did later correct this, as you'll see in the end of this video with the finished product. We're all human, right? Overall, I'm really happy with how this project turned out. I think it makes the guitar look a whole lot better. Adds some uniqueness, but it's still classy. It's not too crazy in your face. If you'd guessed it, it's a PRS. Let's hear what it sounds like. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Oh, just one more thing.